This past week, FBI Director Christopher Wray and Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas failed to show up for a planned public hearing into worldwide threats, instead offering to speak only behind closed doors. The FBI and DHS claiming that both officials have testified publicly many times, and any further information should be provided in a classified setting. That drew sharp rebuke from the Senate Homeland Security Committee chairman and Michigan Democrat Senator Gary Peters, who said in part, their claims that they can only relay such information and respond to questions in a classified setting are entirely without merit. Joining me now in this Sunday Morning Futures exclusive is former Department of Defense Chief of Staff Kash Patel, who is reportedly on President-elect Trump's shortlist to become the next director of the FBI. Kash Patel, great to have you this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Your reaction to what you just heard from Pam Bondi, incoming, perhaps, next U.S. Attorney General?
President Trump received a constitutional mandate from the American people in the executive branch, in the House of Representatives, and the United States Senate. His selection of Pam Bondi to be the Attorney General and nominate her shows you his dedication and commitment to that constitutional mandate. Pam Bondi is a fantastic nominee to represent and restore the Constitution. And we'll talk about threats overseas in a minute, but let's talk about the problems facing Washington and America right now. The fact that you have leaders of the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice and FBI failing to show up to Congress is a constitutional violation of their duties. I want constitutional representatives like Pam Bondi to be appointed and Senate confirmed, and I don't want them to forget that on day one. She won't. I want them to remember that the FBI, the DOJ, the DOD report to the United States Senate and the United States House of Representatives, and that commitment continues throughout their entire tenure. And I don't want any more Washington speak about we can't talk about this or we can't talk about that. The American people deserve courage and commitment and constitutional oversight, and that's what President Trump is going to deliver. And I just want people to show up to the United States Senate unequivocally, whoever is named in whatever position, and say, we work for you, and you work for the American people.
Kash, I know you've been a student of all of this for many, many years, with all of your roles, including the Chief of Staff of the Department of Defense. I want to get your take on what former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe said about you. He targeted you specifically, saying that you would be dangerous. No part of the FBI's mission is safe with Kash Patel in any position of leadership in the FBI, and certainly not in the Deputy Director's job. From Andrew McCabe. Your reaction?
Well, look, my 16-plus years in government service as a public defender, as a national security prosecutor, as a civilian in Joint Special Operations Command, leading President Trump's counterterrorism missions, taking out Baghdadi, returning hostages, serving as his Deputy Director of National Intelligence, and lastly as Chief of Staff. The only thing I was beholden to was the United States Constitution. And yes, I was a lead investigator where we exposed the Russiagate crimes that Comey, McCabe, Strzok, and Page, and so many others committed. And we reported to Congress those oversight matters, and those were taken up through them in the right course to the American people. So if anyone has a complaint about that and questions my unwavering commitment to the Constitution, I'm happy to talk to them about it. I'm especially happy to talk to the media about it. But you can look at my record, and those calling me a danger, let's just ask them for a proof, a piece of evidence that actually shows I've committed any constitutional violations or any ethical quandaries, and I'd love to hear their response to this.
Yeah, it's interesting because all of this, when they were saying Russia, Russia, Russia with President Trump, they were actually missing what was a serious danger, and that was communist China. And I know you've also done extensive work on the threat of communist China. Talk to us about that in terms of what you see as the most important threats facing this nation right now.
It dovetails what we were talking about. These leaders of DOD, the IC, and everywhere else have to report back to the Senate their findings and revolve around their budgets and make sure that we are attacking our adversaries. So it's threefold for me. It's the CCP, it's Russia, and it's Iran. And it's what they're doing in space, especially that is concerning. They have taken a leap. Remember, people were laughing at President Trump when he created the Space Force. He did that brilliantly and with foresight. And what we need to do is take on the orbital landscape above the Earth's atmosphere and make sure we have the technology based on Elon Musk and company to take on these threats, the cyber capabilities they are doing to us. The CCP is inundating us with public companies, and also the sub-oceanic efforts that Russia and the CCP are undertaking must be at the top of the list, in my opinion, to take on, so that we don't have a crushing defeat in our electrical grid infrastructure, and also that we protect the American people. And lastly, Iran. They are the world state sponsor of terror. They cannot have a nuclear weapon, and President Trump's mandate to remove them from the JCPOA and make sure they don't have access to the global banking system is something he needs to work with Congress on again, to make sure our allies and adversaries align with the no-fail mission of the United States of America.
Well, and all of these things, you're just touching on some of the issues that we talk about, but I'm glad that you went to space there. But what about some of the other practical things that we've seen no response whatsoever? Continued intellectual property theft, a cover-up of COVID, fentanyl coming through our southern border, all of this, communist China, and we really haven't seen any response. Iran, the same thing. They had, efforts to kill President Trump, and yet no response from the Biden administration. I was told that, in fact, is an act of war. Again, he didn't respond to it until just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, right now is, I think, in my opinion, the most dangerous time, the sort of lame duck period, where the president is not acting in the capability that needs to defend this nation. And what we need to do is have our leaders of the agencies and departments that were confirmed by the Senate show up and do their job and tell the Senate and the House of Representatives, these are our failures, these are our weaknesses, we need help, we need you to respond in this time of need. And those guys not showing up to the Hill and just deflecting their responsibility shows us how much more danger we are in. We know what President Trump's going to do, but he's 54 days away from taking the oath of office. Right now, we need the United States of America to remind those agencies and department leaders that they work for us, and the mandate that President Trump was given was to protect our borders, to make sure CCP fentanyl doesn't kill our children, to end the forever wars, to return our hostages, and make sure American global diplomacy is in great hands when President Trump ascends to the Oval Office on January 20th. And we must respect the will and power of Congress. I cannot stress that enough. The constitutional oversight responsibilities of the United States House of Representatives and the Senate has been lost by the leaders of the deep state in Washington, D.C., and I think President Trump is going to restore that with his selections and his nominees.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the public has also lost trust in a number of these agencies. Kash, how do you believe Americans will regain trust in our most important law enforcement agencies?
One thing: exposure of corruption. Put out the documents, put out the evidence. We only have gotten halfway down the Russiagate hole. The people need to know that their FBI is restored by knowing full well what they did to unlawfully surveil them. The people need to know that there has been a de-weaponization, a defanging of the Department of Justice, and their houses of worship will no longer be raided. But they need to be shown the documents that said this was the reasoning they weaponized justice. And that, in my opinion, is how Congress can most importantly secure the trust, or resecure the trust, of these agencies and departments. President Trump is taking a huge first step with his monumental victory. Now it's up to Congress and the Senate to work with his leaders at DOJ and FBI to put out those documents. And I think DOJ goes a long way in that, but we're going to need cabinet secretaries who say, we don't fear the corruption that preceded us. It will make us powerful if we expose it to the American public.
All right, Kash, it's great to have you this morning. We'll be watching. Thanks very much for joining me.